Would Bo Horvat please join our legendary captains at center ice?
Doughty, a shot, he scores! And Drew goes with feet. Let me hear you.
You know, it feels good to have that confidence in me and playing with great players.
Are you ready?
Happy Thanksgiving, and there may be a birthday to celebrate here as well. We'll get into that a little bit later. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You, of course, can follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE. You could follow us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, where someone will be tweeting something about something hockey related. And, of course, you are listening on Spreaker.com, and you can subscribe on where you get your favorite podcasts. So Chris and Heidi were not able to be with us because it is Thanksgiving weekend, and they are spending time with their families. But Tyler is with us. Hello, Tyler.
Hey, Kevin.
What's how's it going?
This has been a grind of a week for me. I had a whole bunch of hockey last weekend, and I'm paying the price for it this week. Came down with a cold. I'm still trying to get past it, but I feel well enough today to join the podcast, but it has been a brutal week.
I hear you, because I've been feeling a little bit of that as well. I've been fighting that off, trying to fight it off. I have not done well, but if I cough, I apologize. How's Sean doing?
I'm doing well, and just like Chris and Heidi are off spending time with their family, I get to bring on my family into the podcast for this weekend, which is awesome.
There we go. And so, speaking of which, and you know, Devin, this is going to be the worst song ever, but happy birthday to you. That'll stop right there. Yes. But that is it. Happy birthday. How's it going, Devin?
Thank you. It's going well. Like you guys, I'm trying to fight off a cold right now, so a little sniffly, but I'm happy to be on.
Yes, and there is lots to talk about. There's a topic we'll get into later that Devin just got absolutely enraged about, so I'm looking forward to that a little bit later. But I want to take you back to the NHL draft of 2013. It was a time of controversy in Canucks land because the Canucks were supposed to have Corey Schneider as their number one goalie and trade the asset of Roberto Luongo off to somewhere. But that didn't work out because, as Luongo famously said, his contract sucked. So Corey Schneider ended up being traded for a man by the name of Bo Horvat. The 7th pick of that draft. Who knew that then 6 years later, in the 50th anniversary season of the Vancouver Canucks, or however you look at it, in a historic old ceremony that had a lot of pomp and circumstances, Bo Horvat has been named the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll get to the ceremonial stuff, I guess, a little bit later, but let's start with kind of it's not a surprise that Bo Horvat's the captain, but let's start with the progression of Bo Horvat. Like, if going back to 2013, did you see this guy, or did you feel that this would be a guy that would be wearing a C in a Vancouver Canuck jersey?
Well, first off, I think we have to mention that Bo Horvat's career started off, like with the NHL, started off with a bang, with a complete Gary Bettman, amazing quote. You're gonna want to hear this.
You're gonna want to hear this. That is right.
I know. I was waiting for one of those at the draft this year, too.
Yeah. Yes.
But when the Canucks drafted him, I was hoping for Valeri Nichushkin after the trade was made. How wrong was I? And But once I looked into it and saw the type of player that Bo Horvat was, and then followed him through his, I think, 2 years of 1 or 2 more years of junior hockey, and I just realized that this guy was special. And then the big knock on Bo Horvat when he was first drafted was his skating, and lo and behold, he took that to heart and made that a strength of his game. And when he did that, that just made me step back and think and really analyze him a little bit more, and just realize that there's definitely something there with him, and he's going to be someone that's going to be part of the Canucks' future for a long time, whether he got to this level where he's a 50, 60-point player and the captain of the team, or if he did something, or if he was just going to be a sort of a second or third line middling winger or center. I just thought he was going to be someone that the Canucks were going to be very happy with going forwards. And he's proven me right in that aspect and surpassed a lot of expectations for people.
When he first came in, I wasn't thinking about, this guy's a future captain or whatever, but he was the first of the new generation of potential stars for the Canucks. And right away, he was great at faceoffs. He earned the trust of Willie Desjardins, a coach at the time, to take some key faceoffs. So that was encouraging to see. And then from there, every season it seemed like he was just addressing something in his game. Sean talked about the skating. In more recent years, he seems more willing, from my observation, to drive to the net. And now it's gotten to the point where in the last year and a half, you see the way that the guy plays, the way he carries himself, the way he handles the media. There isn't anybody out there, that has any concerns, I don't think, with him being the captain. I mean, people for the last year and a half have been screaming, put the C on this guy already. So Canucks didn't want to rush it, and here we are now. But it's just nice to see that, it's earned over a period of time, and there's really no doubts about the choice, and now they move forward as a team with him as the leader.
Yeah, I think he's done a great job with the team the past couple of years, and I think that one of the first things that I heard about Bo Horvat was that his leadership skills, and I think looking back on the past couple of years, it's without a doubt the best pick for captaincy. And just from an outsider's point of view, I think it's a perfect pick, and the way he carries himself on and off the ice, and I think his play shows it as well. He's a great 200-foot player. He's put up 20 goals the past 4 years, and I don't know. I think it's a great pick.
And I think that's the key, is the 200-foot play. I think if you're going to get buy-in from the rest of the team to hunker down defensively or play a certain style in a certain situation, if you have the guy that's able to do all of those things and set the tone on the ice, everybody else will naturally follow.
And with the history of the Canucks and being wanting their players to be very well respected in the community, from Linden to the Sedins, Bo Horvat's an amazing addition to that group. There's the story of what he had a friend and teammate in junior that was unfortunately passed away in a car accident, and he decided that to memorize the player. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. He would wear the number 53, which was because I believe it was a goalie. The guy was a goalie, and his number was 35. So to commemorate a friend of his, Bo Horvat has worn 53 ever since. And when he came into the Canucks organization, they were in the they tried to keep as many of the numbers in the as low numbers, because that's a bit of a Canadian and old school hockey thought. But when they heard the story of why Bo Horvat wore 53, they gave him all the blessing in the world, because they understood why he did that, and why he and it just shows the type of person that Bo Horvat is.
Yeah, I think this was a great decision. There was no doubt in anybody's mind that it was going to be done. I thought, yeah, this is a great step, and really in terms of the game, which we'll talk a little bit about in a bit, it really felt like the Canucks took a step. We'll talk about that a little bit. But the other thing, and Devin probably sees this in a different way, supporting the Leafs, because the Leafs, for all the rub or snide comments that I have, that they at least try to do things in terms of traditional stuff. They did the Tavares captaincy thing pretty well, which led to the Canucks presentation, which I thought was really well done. I thought it was great to see Todd Bertuzzi get an ovation. I thought it was nice to go through the history of captains. There was a couple people missing. Of course, we did not see Roberto Luongo, which would have been epic to see. But we also did not see Trevor Linden. And I'm wondering if you were bothered by that or not.
I wasn't. I wasn't surprised, really. I think it would be crazy to assume that there isn't some friction there still between Francesco Aquilini and Trevor Linden. But officially, apparently, Trevor was not available. He was out of town or had another commitment or something. So I'll accept that. I'm sure Trevor would have, if he did receive the invitation, I'm sure he would have taken it up. It is a glaring omission because of how revered he is and all that. But they had Kirk McLean there. That was pretty awesome.
That was too.
See him in full gear and look like a mask from 1994 and then Todd Bertuzzi, of course, bringing the house down when he showed up. So it was, it was certainly a glaring omission, but I don't think it takes too much away from the ceremony.
I don't think it took anything away from the ceremony. I didn't expect Linden there just because of everything that went on. And Linden enjoys being very busy with his ventures, so I assumed that he was just busy doing something else that makes him happy with his business ventures and all that. From what I've been hearing, from the media and on Twitter and all that, he'll be taking part in one or two of the ceremonies throughout the season because the Canucks, with it being their 50th celebration, they are going to have multiple different nights and celebrations to show respect to everyone who has come before with this franchise. So he'll be there for the 90s. The 90s night is my guess, and then maybe potentially for the 2000s as well. So I do think that he won't be forgotten with the 50th celebration for the Canucks, and it gave us a chance to see Kirk McLean in full gear again. And because I know when I was watching and they said he brought you the stave, I just started yelling at the TV, he better be in gear, because I know he doesn't play goalie anymore when he does the alumni games and everything. He plays out, because I think there's definitely a thing with a lot of goalies who they just enjoy playing out because it's so different once they retire. So seeing him in that getup with the old pad, the old mask, was just amazing. And then when Bertuzzi came out, I was just a little more speechless than anything else. And to see him in that uniform, it brought back memories, because that was my teenage years, was the Todd Bertuzzi years. And I don't think people realize, or they've forgotten, how dominant of a player Todd Bertuzzi was in a 3 to 4 year span. There was not a player who could there was not a power forward that could dominate a game like Todd Bertuzzi could in those early 2000 years.
It looked like Bert was getting a little emotional there, trying to fight some tears back, the way he was being received from the fans.
He has been, he's been through a lot. I don't think we look back to that incident in 2004, and like how he became like when he signed on with the Flames a few years later. I know that there was a lot of Flames fans that were not happy with that signing because of what he did. And he's worked through a lot to get through to where he is, like as a human being. And I think I can understand that. And I don't like, to me, I feel like I don't know if a lot of Canuck fans were angry at him necessarily, but I think he, it took a lot for him to come back, I think, to where he was. Maybe I'm missing. Am I making sense?
I think you're making sense, Kevin. With that whole year and the playoffs, that was supposed to be the year that the Canucks went deep and had that run. The run that the Flames went on was supposed to be the Canucks run, and going into that 04 playoffs versus the Flames, and not having Todd Bertuzzi in the lineup really hurt them. And it's just unfortunate that it happened, and I feel he felt very emotional about not only what happened to Steve Moore, but to the effect it had on the Canucks as a team as well. And I think there's definitely some thought about that as for Canucks fans, but I do think that time heals most wounds, and I do think that Canucks fans can look back at what he was as a player and what he meant to this franchise, what is as a positive more than a negative now.
Devin, what do you think?
Yeah, from a Flames perspective, I thought it was a good signing for him to be a Calgary Flame. I didn't have any bad thoughts towards him. I mean, yeah, what he did was inexcusable, and it affected a lot of people, not just Steve Moore. I think it was it was a good signing looking back on it, but I had no problem with him being a part of a Flame.
Yeah, I would have been okay with him staying a little bit longer, but I know that I was cynical, but he did play pretty well there, and yeah, I think for him there's a lot more going on for that. So yeah, in terms of that game, there's some controversy we'll get into a little bit after, because someone said something after, and I think it'll blend, but it was the first win for the Canucks. We saw Pettersson Besser score. We saw Quinn Hughes score. To me, it felt like after the first two games, which were really, they're tough to play home openers, it felt like this was the game that the Canucks kind of got their legs under them. And I'm wondering if you felt that this was just now we're lockstepped in. Now the Canucks are on their way, or is it still work to do?
I think there's still work to do, but I do think that the Canucks played all right in both those first two games. I think they deserved a better outcome in the Oilers game, and after that first goal in the Calgary game, they started chasing and just were never able to get back into it until the end, and when it was too late. And then they got the momentum and just rode it with that in the home opener for them. It was good. They showed that they could have three lines that can be offensive threats with the change that they made, moving Brandon Sutter to the wing and having Adam Gaudette as the number 3 center. I think that's gonna be a very good change for the Canucks. And then Bo Horvat's line still showed well, even though they moved JT Miller up to the top line, who had a 4-point night. I think that just shows the depth that the Canucks now have, and I think while we're still waiting for the PD and Besser show to really kick into high gear, it shows that even when they aren't necessarily dominating games, the Canucks can still win this year. So I think that's the one thing I took away from that game, is that now that with the acquisitions the Canucks have made, they don't necessarily need to rely on Pettersson and Besser to carry the lion's share of the offense game in and game out.
Couple things about the home opener. I mean, I felt like the first 2 games for the Canucks on the road, they were still stuck in preseason mode a little bit. That was finally gone for the home opener. And I know the team was informed already as to who the captain was going to be, and they knew that internally. I think just having the coronation completed and all of that media distraction behind them was helpful as well. Not to take away from the Canucks' performance on Wednesday, but LA sucked. I mean, I want to temper expectations a little bit. I mean, the Kings did not put forward a very good effort there on Wednesday night. It kind of felt like they used up all their gas the night before against Calgary there, and the whole Doughty and Chucky thing, and the Canucks are going to face, I would say, stronger competition tonight against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I find it hard, or I could see how it would be hard for the Canucks to have 2 home openers as their first 2 games, Flames and Oilers, and you're not really in the routine of just being out there for the national anthem, then let's play kind of thing. It's there's more pomp and circumstance of being in another team's arena while they're doing their home opener, and everybody's jacked up for them, and you can come out flat at the beginning of the game. And yeah, I don't know. I think that once they finally got their own home opener, especially having the captaincy of Bo Horvat being announced and it being your 50th year in the league, you got to be up for those games. The line shuffling I think was good. JT Miller on the top line, I think if he's a better fit up there with Bo and Petey. And I believe Ferland, he, like I said last time on the podcast, he is streaky. When he's on, he's great, but I think he's probably still trying to find his footing in Canuck land. But yeah, I'm with you, Tyler. I think tonight's game is going to be a good one with them playing Philadelphia, and because they're coming out 2-0 right now, so it'll be a good test.
Yeah, and the other thing too with Ferland, to be fair to the guy is recovering from a flu. He lost weight, so give him some time to get going. But yeah, he certainly is streaky. Quinn Hughes got his first goal. I think that's the other thing that came out of that. That was nice to see. I'm sure it's going to be one of many, and he is looking. He is really looking like, I think, what everybody expected, and maybe just a touch more.
Oh, he's looking fantastic. The zone entry on his goal that he created was just and setting up. But I think it was Adam Gaudette going in on goal. Like it really looks like the defenders and the opposing teams know what Quinn Hughes can do, and are really giving him a lot of respect and space to be able to do that, especially when he comes in with speed, because he backs the defense off so much that he can slow down, look for the trailing forwards to figure out who to make that pass to and send them in on a very good offensive scoring chance, or just feed offensive dynamo Chris Tanev for a tap-in deflection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chris Coffey, Tanev, yes. I remember I've always tried to compare him to Paul Coffey, you guys, Tanev and Coffey. Like, we're starting to finally see it, right?
Yeah, I was just like, where's he going? so weird to see him up in the rush like that.
Yeah. But
he didn't realize that it was Hughes with the puck. He thought it was someone else. So
yeah. Yeah, but overall, 1 and 2, we'll see tonight. They play the Flyers. It will be interesting. The last thing I do want to get into here before we move on, and I was thinking about this. So Roger Nielsen, we have seen, has been honored. There's the famous statue outside of Rogers Arena. Their Pat Quinn has been honored as well. And I bring these two up because they are the two coaches that led the Canucks to the Stanley Cup final. What should the Canucks do about Alain Vigneault? And do you think that they will do something tonight, considering he is part of their history and a huge part of their history?
I don't think they do anything tonight, but I do think that they, other than maybe just a thank you and maybe a video tribute to him, but I do think that he will be honored eventually, because he arguably was the best coach in Canucks history, and he'll definitely get his own. I think just like Pat Quinn's up in the Ring of Honor, I think Alain Vigneault will get that in due time.
Yeah, that's an interesting question you asked there, Kevin, because, I mean, it's been so long now since Alain Vigneault left the Canucks. He's now 2 teams later in his coaching career, so I'm not sure. But then again, this is a Hockey Night in Canada game. They might want to, do something. Be interesting to see what happens or doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they don't do a video tribute. Just with it being, the 50 years of Canucks in the league, and I think that they should do something to show him a bit of respect, and I don't see a better time than Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like there is an opportunity here to tell the story of Alain Vigneault, and it's hard not to look. And really, I don't know if he gets enough credit for what happened in 2011. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of talk about Gillis around here, but Vigneault, I don't know if he got enough credit, especially how he handled the media during 2011. I thought was one of the big reasons why they were able to get. So, I mean, obviously it was on the ice, but kind of the psychological advantage that how Alain Vigneault stuck up for his team. And the fact of the matter is, villainous run for the Vancouver Canucks. This was not Canada's team. There was actually, you could argue, most of Canada was actually voting against the Canucks at that time. And how Alain Vigneault handled that, I think he deserves some credit for that. So I do hope the Canucks honor him in some way, shape, or form, in my mind.
Like I said, I think they will do something to just recognize him tonight, like a video tribute, as Devin said. But I think more is coming, because I think if you're recognizing Pat Quinn, and you've recognized the importance of Roger Nielsen to the Canucks franchise, you have to recognize the importance of Alain Vigneault. And I think one thing we have to mention, if we're talking about Alain Vigneault, is the move. The biggest move he made was to move Alex Burrows up to the sitting line.
Yep.
Because as good as Alex Burrows and Ryan Kessler were as a shutdown duo to play against the opposing team's top line, he made that move to move a left shot winger to the sitting line, and when everyone was clamoring for a right shot guy. And it worked. They made it work, and he put together one of the top line in the NHL for a couple seasons, when not many, you could make an argument that not many coaches would have. So I just think that that needs to be mentioned when you talk about Alain Vigneault.
I think there's also something to be said about likability. He was very affable, a funny guy, liked to have some fun with the media at times. And I think that that counts for something with fans. It certainly does for me. I always admired how Alain Vigneault handled himself when he was here.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk a little Flames here. And there's a lot to talk about. And I'm in my head trying to figure out where to go. And I think maybe the best way to start this, in my mind here, we'll get to the drinking game, we'll get to the feud. But, Devin, is it me, or are we seeing a much different David Rittich this year?
Oh, we are. He's finally coming to his own. I mean, it's only been 5 games, but I'm really happy to see how he's playing. He's been the best player every game. He's living up to his nickname, Big Save Dave. He's made some timely saves and spectacular saves. He's just you see this calm, poised goaltender back there. You know, I'm not saying he's going to be a number one yet. You know, he's got to prove himself throughout the year, but he's really solidified himself as of right now to be the number one. And I think one thing that's really noticeable is his puck moving ability. Having a mentor last year of Mike Smith and the year before, I think was beneficial to his development. And you can see that once he comes out of the net. You know, it's not a panic. It's not throwing it up the boards, coughing it up. But he's able to make that pass, and I think that's been very beneficial to the team.
Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's you can go,
Tyler, Sean. No, I was just going to say, I think it's got to be reassuring for a Flames fan to see Riddick get off to a good start here. That for me, that was kind of the concern. Was okay. He had a great year last year. Didn't get the nod for the playoffs. What would happen this year? Would he be able to carry it forward? Well, it looks like he has been able to do that. You know, Devin, you say he's not a solidified number one yet. I mean, is Cam Talbot really going to push for that spot? I don't think so. I mean, Riddick's the guy, I think, in Calgary, and so far, so good. I think, you know, he's given them some really solid goaltending.
And I like his fire. I like his emotion, and I like his the way he acts on the ice. I think it's really rubbing off on the team, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be key to watch for the Flames. And he's become a bit of a leader for the Flames. Outside of Tkachuk and Gio, I think he's probably your third emotional leader on that team. And that's big. And if he can continue to make big saves and fire up the boys with the way he reacts to them, I think that's good for the Flames going forward.
See, I have this. I started to think about this, and maybe I was conspiracy. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist theorizing this, but. Watching how the Flames, I don't think the Flames have been outstanding this season yet. I don't think that they've had that complete game. They've had like spurts of moments. Even the Vancouver game, there were spurts. I mean, you could argue if this was on draw, you could argue that Canucks probably dominated the game. But I feel like the Flames are playing more relaxed with Rittich behind them. And I feel like Mike Smith tightened them up.
I would agree with that. I think that he has that calming aura about himself. But at the same time, like Sean said, he's fiery. I know the guys love him in the room. And anytime that the games are close, you know, they want to make sure that he is surrounded by a good defense, a good defensive system. And I think... Yeah, with Mike Smith, it's just his aura was very uptight, you know, very snappy, and it just wasn't. It didn't. I don't know. I just don't see it as a good way to. Yeah, I didn't think it was good for the Flames having that kind of goaltender. But yeah, I think that Riddick he definitely has that calming sense to him.
I would say Mike Smith has a lot more of a negative, fiery, drama-based personality. Well, Riddick, I believe, comes across more positive. He's more of a cheerleader than Mike Smith. He's more of a "let's go, boys" versus Mike Smith, who would just, if something bad happened, he would ream someone out for it type deal, or it would cause drama with the way he acted to a bump to him, or anything like that. Just created more drama than needed. While Rittich, I think, has a bit more of a positive, fiery attitude, which I think is what the Flames needed.
Yeah. It's just interesting dynamic. I'm not, Oiler fans. I'm not going out and bashing Mike Smith, but the atmosphere is different. And I know that Oiler fans are celebrating. Twitter was all over this. James Neal has matched his goals output for the entire year of last year with the Calgary Flames. Let's hear what he has to say.
Back home is saying, man, you had 7 goals all last season, got 6 already in 3 games. What happened?
Well, I mean, I've scored my whole career. I've put pressure on myself to be a goal scorer, and wanted that pressure. Last year was a tough year, and I wanted a chance to prove myself. And obviously, things worked out in the summer with the trade, and I came here and had people that believed in me and believed that I could bounce back and put a good season together and help a team win and help a team get to the playoffs. So, it feels good to have that confidence in me and playing with great players.
So, James Neal, and that's why I put the kind of the DX thing, because I feel like there's a couple of times of like there's some 2 words for you here. But Devin, I guess I will start with you. Of course, how are you feeling about this James Neal output? Is it bothering you? Is it whatever? Are we making too much of a big deal out of this? How are you feeling?
Well, it's funny. I looking at the trade of Lucic for Neal. Oilers will technically, quote unquote, win this trade because goals mean more than role players. Lucic, he's a role player. I think the way that he fits within the Flames group this year is way better than Neal did. I mean, Neal didn't really get the chance to do much. He didn't get the chance to be with Johnny and Monty. The only chance that he really did was after a penalty kill. That's when he played with them. But that's not enough time to develop chemistry. And if you look at it, Neal signed on July 1st, not on July 1st, but maybe a day or 2 after. Then the Lindholm-Hanifin trade happened. At that point, Bill Peters even said in an interview that he wants to try Lindholm on that top line, and that was it. And so once that top line solidified, second line, had Bennett, Frolik, and Tkachuk, and that's more of a defensive group. But Neal's not a defensive guy; he's a goal scorer, and so that left him with the third line, and so he really didn't get a chance to, develop anything with the team last year. So now he's on, he's playing with Connor McDavid every once in a while. He's playing with Brad Nugent-Hopkins. He has that goal-scoring line, and he's given the opportunity on the top power play unit to do something with his talents. He's a goal scorer. And that's, like you said in that interview, that's what he is. That's what he's done his entire career. So I think, I'm happy for the guy. I'm not happy for the Oilers, but I'm happy to see that it's not just he's not done. But it does leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth because I do have Oilers fans texting me. Oilers friends texting me saying, oh, look at what Neal's doing. Neal scored again. It's kind of like, damn it.
Yeah. There's something to be said about fit in hockey. Just one name that pops to my mind that played for the Canucks, Nick Bonino. I mean, he always seemed to underwhelm Canuck fans when he was with Vancouver. But I mean, I thought he was great with the Ducks before that, and then he went on and did very well with the Penguins after that, and I think he's now with Nashville. So, like, sometimes the fit just isn't there, and I think that's the case for James Neal. You know, it just didn't work out for him in Calgary. Doesn't mean that he's a bad player or that the Flames had bad intentions for him. It was just an issue of fit, and I think you could say that with Mike Smith. I mean, he's looking pretty good in Edmonton right now.
Mike Smith, I don't think played bad for the Flames last year. I think we've done on this podcast. We've gone through the numbers, and as good as David Rittich was at times last year, he still was not that great last year. But he was able at home. And what endeared him to the fans was his play at home. On the road last year, he was not good. So that's the one thing that he needs to make an improvement on this year. But in terms of James Neal, it was all fit. Once he's a scorer, and he needs a playmaking center to play with, and he never got that with the Flames. And in all honesty, the Flames don't necessarily have a true quote unquote playmaking center. You got Sean Monahan, who's more of a goal scorer. Backlund and Bennett are more grinders than anything else, and they'll grind it out with a cycle.
Oh, did we lose?
I think we may have lost Sean there. See if we can get him back.
Yeah, I think where Sean was going with that was just there was no playmaking centers for him, right?
So
go for it.
Now that he's on the Oilers, he's got whoever he plays with, whether it's McDavid or Nuge, he's got someone who can get him the puck in shooting areas that he can capitalize on. I think the other issue right now with the Flames is Lucic, as much as good as he's been physically and all that, that stick is where offense goes to die. And every time I've seen him get the puck in the slot area, it looks like he's a baby giraffe learning how to walk again. Like he just doesn't have it right now, and whether he can find it or throughout the season, he just looks like he does not know how to handle the puck, and it's very apparent that he's if you give him the puck on the slot, I have no confidence that he's going to be able to let alone bury it, but even put a decent shot on that.
Well, Lucic, he's a role player, right? I think they had too much expectation up in Edmonton about what he's going to do and what he's going to bring. And where the game is going is not what Lucic is anymore. And going back to role plays, I think he's perfect on that third line with Derek Grun and Sam Bennett. Both him and Bennett are grinders, and they play a good north-south game. You get the puck deep, you bang and crash their defenseman and try and, as far as Lucic goes, have a bit of a deterrent. He's had 2 fights, 1.5 fights, if you will, with, who's that, McDermott he fought in L.A., or against L.A., and then he also,
the Zadorov attack.
punch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just, it's hard to compare. Apples and oranges. Neal is a great fit in Edmonton because they're looking for goal scoring, and Calgary is looking for a deterrent / just a role playing guy that is physical that can, I guess put people in the line.
Well, to me, the other thing is, too, I heard Dave Randor say this yesterday on a Vancouver radio station, and he made this point. For the Flames, this isn't about October. This trade was about April, and what Milan Lucic can do in April in a playoff run. And the Flames felt that they were missing some of that edge, and that they feel that Lucic can bring that. Now, I don't know if I necessarily fully agree with that, but I think I do think that the playoffs is where if the Flames move forward, there's an inherent hope that this trade looks a little bit better. But I mean, the Oilers it's hard to say that the Flames are ever going to win this trade. I mean, they may end up getting the 3rd round pick. But I mean, offensively, yeah, Lucic has struggled, but I would agree with everyone. I think he's made more of an effort here in Calgary than he has in Edmonton. I think he's trying at least. I mean, I don't think he was ever that dynamic of an offensive player anyway. Like even in his prime, that wasn't Lucic's game in the NHL. I mean, but it was more about being that presence. So I think if he's doing that, then that's great. And I think if guys like Mangiapane and Reeder and Bennett take a step up, that can suffice for what Neal, the Flames thought Neal was going to bring. So they're not going to win the trade, but there's some ways that there can be a positives out of this. So we'll wait and see. And James Neal is not going to keep up the goal scoring pace. He is going to hit a slump. So, to think this guy's like I don't think anyone in Edmonton is thinking he's a 40 or 50 goal scorer. But
really,
I don't.
I don't think so either. But I'm sure there's the optimistic types there that feel like this pace is going to continue for some length of time.
Well, I think it's because they see what Connor McDavid can do, and they think maybe he's going to produce more because of Connor McDavid. But
yeah.
I still think you're going to hit a slump with him.
Oh yeah, no. There's no way he's going to stay this hot. No, and thank you for bringing that up, Kevin, because I don't think I've heard anybody sort of try to inject some reality into the situation.
Yeah, I try. Now the other thing that happened, and this actually does connect with the Canucks as well, was Drew Doughty. But first, let's go back to last Saturday's After Hours. Matthew Tkachuk was asked about Mr. Drew Doughty and his feud. Let's see if I can get this close to
his game. Right. But has it ever crossed your mind that maybe you should show a Norris Trophy winner and a Stanley Cup champion more respect?
I show Gio respect. He's a Norris Trophy winner.
So it starts there, and
get another tweet in here. This is from...
Oh, sorry, hang on here. I'll just hit close on that. Anyway, yeah, so it starts there. Then Drew Doughty is pretty much booed every time he touches the puck. He gets the winning goal, and, of course, basically kind of gives the whole bunch of symbols to the Flame fan base. So first of all, I guess in terms of the overall feud, is the Tkachuk-Doughty feud the best feud in hockey?
As of right now, I think it is. I think, it brings a light to an early game in October of a shitty team like LA and a decently good team in Calgary. I love it. I absolutely love it. And that quote, I show Gio respect, and he's a Norris Trophy winner. I love it. I think it's perfect. It's great for the game right now.
Yeah, I'm going to agree there too.
The only other player rivalry that's even close is Evander Kane and Ryan Reeves, despite what Sportsnet wants to try and throw down our throats with the Kapanen and Domi situation. There's really two top-end player rivalries, and that's Doughty and Tkachuk and Reeves and Evander Kane. And I give the edge to Doughty and Tkachuk because they are both very good players, very good top-end first-line, first-pair players, as opposed to Evander Kane and Ryan Reeves, who are just, you've got one good second-line player and a fourth-line fighter. So,
yeah. And for somebody that's detached from the Kings and the Flames, when you have a feud like that happening between a couple of namers, it gives you a reason to watch the game. So that to me is the measuring stick for a feud between a couple of players. Does it get the casual fan interested in watching those two compete against each other? And for me, that's definitely true.
And when they both come out and produce in that game, both getting 3 points, both Tkachuk tying the game up and Doughty getting the winner in overtime, that just adds to the drama and makes it so much more fun.
Yeah.
Not to mention that goal Tkachuk scored was amazing. Arguably, I think it was high sticking, but I'm happy that they didn't review it because I think it would have got overturned. But just Doughty. I mean, Doughty's goal went off of, I believe it was Hamonic Skate and in. But I mean, overall, I think that was probably one of the best, if not the best, game of the year so far.
And in terms of that high stick, I think if it was 2 years ago, even last year, I think it would have been overturned. But I believe that they're trying to get away from those nitpicky calls. And unless there is absolute proof that the call on the ice was wrong, they're gonna stick with the call on the ice. And I think I like that, because is millimeters the spirit of the rule? No, it's not. And that was very, very close. And I'm still trying to get used to this new standard, and I was expecting it to get overturned, but I don't mind this just go with the call on the ice unless it's very egregiously wrong.
And especially when players show off talent like that, that's why that's one of the reasons why I watch the game, is to watch talent be put on a show, And I'm happy to see that the NHL's kind of going towards more of that way.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with all of that, all those things as well. But I'm going to propose that Drew Doughty is probably one of the most entertaining players. And just as a side note, this guy would be on my Olympic team if the pros are coming back. There's no doubt in my mind, in terms of ability, Drew Doughty is on that team without question. But I also think he's becoming one of the more entertaining players, for good or bad. He made a comment after the Vancouver Canucks game. He says we shouldn't be losing to a team like this. I guess my question is, do we think, though, that Drew Doughty is happy in LA? Is it time for him to move on, or is he okay where he is?
He's an emotional player, and that's showing through right now with the frustration of where LA is as a team in their just the whole rebuild and retool. They've got a few old players, including him, that are still good, but they don't have the depth anymore because of just the way things go with when you build a team. And they've got some good young players coming up, but it's going to be a couple of years before they're going to be looking at competing for the playoffs again. And I think that's what's really frustrating him, because he's a very emotional, competitive person and player. And as entertaining as he is now, I think there might be if LA is as bad as they were last year, I think there could be some talk that he might be looking to move out and become and go to a team that's a more competitive, at least going forward, because I don't see him willing to stick it out too much long term if LA continues to be as bad as they have been in at least last year, and then even going into the year before, as they've been falling down the standings.
For him to be unhappy at this stage after signing a fairly big contract in recent times and the 2 Cup wins, and home games are in Southern California, I mean, it'd be awfully disappointing if he was looking to get out at this stage, especially as Sean alludes to. There is some promising talent in their system. I don't know. Just going back to Doughty's comment about losing to the Canucks, I think that's a comment as much on the Kings as it is the Canucks. I mean, I think Doughty's talking a little bit to his own team there, saying our effort was really terrible tonight. Like, we should be able to compete better against the Canucks, and I think that's true. I mean, the Canucks were a non-playoff team last year. It's not St. Louis they're playing against, not Boston they're playing against, and to get wiped 8-2, for Doughty, that's not good enough, and it shouldn't be.
Really depends on what he wants. Does he want to go off in the sunset with $8 million for the next couple of years, or does he want to be on a competitive team? Because as much as they do have talent in their system, I don't see LA contending anytime soon. I think that he needs to figure out what he wants, whether or not it's, being nice laid back lifestyle in LA or go to a competitive team like Toronto. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, I was going to ask about that because the Leafs are not doing great. Well, but that's I guess one of the questions I guess is in terms of where Doughty would want to go, and I mean he is from that area, and the Leafs are not exactly off to the greatest start ever. Yes, there's a lot of talk about the tremendous start of goal scoring for Austin Matthews, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are struggling, to say the least. I mean, 2-2-1. They've lost 3 in a row. They and got absolutely flattened by the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that they will have to compete with to get out of that division and go to the Stanley Cup and get to the next round, unless they're a wild card team. But it's you're probably going to have to go through that division. So Devin, I feel like I'm starting with Devin a lot. Mr. Mike Babcock, where are you with him? Is it time for the Leafs to move on, or are we overrating Kyle Dubas?
It's time to move on. I'm not overly happy with how he has structured the lineup. The fact that Austin Matthews wasn't out in the last minute of the playoffs last year, and Patrick Marleau was. I think that's a telling sign. And the way that he loved Ron Hainsey last year, he has his favorites. He loves his big truck-link guys and older experience, and I don't think that's the way that it should be. Dubas, I trust Dubas in what he's doing, and I think the way that he is wanting to structure the lineup is the way that it should be. But Babcock is stubborn. It doesn't seem like he's willing to change. Look at Tortorella. He was very much a very brash, and he still is brash, but outspoken in how he really wants his team to play. And he had to change. He had to adapt, and I don't think Babcock has that in his system or in his. It's not a part of who he is, and I think that it is time for him to go because they're, as of right now, on the top line, or whoever you think is the top line, if it's Matthews line or Tavares line, Kapanen, he's had a rough start, but he's still up there on the top line, and I think that there's a guy named Trevor Moore who has played very well, and the newcomer Mikheyev, I've been really, really happy with the way that he's been playing. He's been really, really good. And I think that, with Kapanen, you don't want to bring him down, but at the same time, you want to make sure that, your top line is good, and I just think that, he's not been able to adapt, and he's too stubborn. But as far as Dubas goes, I trust him fully with the way that he has structured the team, and it's just whether or not they see eye to eye. I don't think that they do.
I have to take the opposite view on Dubas. I don't have much confidence in what he's doing at all, quite frankly. No, maybe that's a bit extreme to say. I mean, he has been creative about being able to get all of these great forwards signed and playing, but he's just left himself with so little wiggle room now to make changes during the season here, and that's a concern. I don't want, we shouldn't overblow one result against Tampa Bay and say, okay, the Leafs can't defend or whatever. It's a concern, I think, but it's still pretty early on here. As far as Babcock, it does feel like the end is near in some fashion here. The question I have is who is really making the decisions? Like, if Kyle Dubas wants to fire Mike Babcock, does Brendan Shanahan agree with that? Brendan Shanahan brought in Mike Babcock. Mike Babcock was there before Kyle Dubas was in his position. So there's a bit of interesting dynamic there that I wonder about a little bit. And is this Leafs team really a team that can get past the first round? I mean, I'm not really seeing that at this point. And either way, if they don't get past the first round, I think that's it for Babcock. I mean, I think it'll be a change for the sake of change. And the question is always, who's a better option out there? Especially for that market to handle the circus and the attention and all that goes with being the head coach in Toronto. I think with the way the Leafs lineup is structured, I don't think it's a bad thing per se to have so much money poured into 4 players, but they're all forwards, and I think that's where they're going to run into some problems.
Yeah, that's the issue with the Leafs right now, is that this is the last year that you're going to see this iteration of the Leafs, because with all that money locked up with forwards, and then you have Tyson Barrie up at the end of the year. They've got Jake Muzzin up at the end of the year. They're going to have to retool Cody Ceci as well. They're going to have to retool this blue line that they've already retooled this year, and they're going to have to hope that Rasmus Sandin develops throughout the year. They're going to have to hope that maybe Timothy Liljegren can finally take that next step and step into the NHL over this year and into next, for them to be able to continue to build on this core that they've got locked up long term, and go from there. It was interesting this morning. I was watching Sportsnet, and they had a clip from Tim and Sid, and Tim McCallum had a very good point that looks like he feels like there is a bit of it's early, but there's a bit of that Tyson Barrie is going to be the next Larry Murphy and Jake Gardiner, where the fan base don't have the confidence in him to be a good defenseman. They can put up points, but defensively they're not sure whether or not that the fan base isn't necessarily going to have the confidence, and they're going to vocalize it very, very emotionally and adamantly as Canadian hockey fans do, and whether or not that could be a big issue, because Tyson Barrie has the potential to be a very good defenseman for the Leafs, like not only this year but long term, if they can get him signed. But if he doesn't feel comfortable in the Toronto and the fan base don't understand what exactly Tyson Barrie is, and because in today's day and age, every defenseman is going to get walked. Every defenseman is going to have a bad shift, because the amount of offensive talent that's in the league now is immense, and I think that's one thing that I think all hockey fans need to start realizing. And don't hold these defensemen to such high expectations that they need to be perfect and not get walked every cut once or twice a game. And but I do think that Babcock is on the hot seat, because the way that he wants to coach and the way that Kyle Dubas wants the team to be constructed or seem to be at loggerheads here. And I do think that Dubas needs to have some sort of look at it and figure out that he needs to change a little bit, because I do think that if you look at the last couple Stanley Cup winners and the teams that the Leafs have had trouble with in the playoffs, there is a bit of a pattern there, and they are big and skilled. And I don't necessarily think that the Leafs are skilled enough with their big guys, but we'll see, and whether or not they can find that right medium of skill, big, and depth. So, I don't think it's going to be Babcock's seat is too hot right now. But if they can't, it'll come down to what they do in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well, and it also depends on the start they have this year, because right now it's not off to a good one. Obviously, they're not doing well, and so if they continue down this road, I don't think Dubas is scared to fire Babcock. I think if things don't change by let's say end of November, end of December, I don't think he's he's scared to do that. So I think that needs to be apparent. It's not just like, yes, this year as a whole for the Leafs is about the playoffs. And, you could take a look at the Flames right now, too. Right now, if the Flames do not do well in the playoffs, I can guarantee you Tree Living will pull the trigger and trade one of his big guys, whether that's Johnny or Monty or whatever. So you could say that about a couple of teams, actually. But, I think that the depth is there. Sandin, he is a great, great player. If anybody gets a chance to watch or likes the Leafs and watches the Leafs, watch him. He is poised. I can guarantee you that he should be a top 4 pairing defenseman right now because of how well he plays. I wouldn't say he's similar to Quinn Hughes, but I would say that they're similar in the fact that they're good defensemen, up and coming. So I don't know. I think that that's all I got.
But okay,
yeah,
so
the likes of Sandin are the ones that are really going to have to come through for Kyle Dubas and get this team over the hump to keep everything in place. And time will tell on that. We'll have to wait and see. As far as Babcock goes, I mean, Devin, you say Dubas wouldn't be afraid to fire him. Again, does he have the authority to do that? Yeah, that's my question, right? Like, I just wonder, would Brendan Shanahan agree with that or not? Well, that's another one that we'll find out in due course. I think if you get to around the flip of the calendar here and the Leafs are not in the playoff spot, then I think there's it's quite legitimate to suggest that a coaching change could happen mid-season.
But I guess the two questions that are there's two questions coming to mind here. Because to be honest with you, Devin, I think this is more on Dubas and Babcock in a lot of ways. I think, and maybe I'm a bit more old school, but I think what Babcock sees, I think he's seeing something that Dubas is missing. But the first question is if Dubas is going to pull this trigger, if we'll go with Tyler and he has the authority from Shanahan to pull this trigger, who do you bring in?
That's a valid point. I don't know who is available right now, off the top of my head. But
there's Ken Hitchcock.
No, I don't think Hitch would be a good fit. He'd be very similar to Hitchcock, Babcock. Sorry, Babcock. So I don't think that'd be if there's going to be a change, there has to be a change in the way that they're thinking, right? So, and maybe if they're out of the playoffs, maybe they do pull the trigger on a Nylander trade or maybe somebody else because maybe they're just if Dubas and Shanahan want to keep Babcock, then maybe they'll candor towards what he wants and his defensive style game. And because right now it seems like Babcock is very high on Marincin, and I've seen nothing good from him. But maybe there's more to it than just a Babcock thing. Maybe Dubas does have the idea of shopping some players around to candor to Babcock.
I would think that if there's going to be a change in coach, that maybe the strongest candidate is the Marlies coach, Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too. He's been with Dubas back to his OHL days, and they both think very similarly. So I think if they do make a move, it's going to be Sheldon Keefe to Sheldon Keefe's benefit, and he'll get the promotion up from the AHL to the NHL at that point.
Yeah. Here's my second question. What is Kyle Dubas' signature move?
Well, I think at this point it's signing John Tavares.
Okay. Let me maybe ask this a different way. What is Kyle Dubas' signature trade?
Oh, that'd be the Barrie trade right now. It's too early to say whether or not that pays off, but that's such a big move where you're moving out Nazem Kadri for Tyson Barrie. That's definitely the signature move right now. I think that trade has potential to be very similar to the the Flames and Carolina trade where it's a win for both teams. Carolina got Dougie Hamilton, who's a big key defenseman for them. They got a good season out of Michael Furland, and then the Flames got the third piece to their top line in Elias Lindholm, and then a solid defenseman in Noah Hannafin. I think that, if you look at the way the Nazem Kadri trade is gonna work out for both Colorado and Toronto, is I think that Tyson Barrie could very well be a really good piece for the Leafs going forwards. Going back to Devin's talk about Rasmus Sandin, I wonder when they put those two together. Sandin Barrie pairing, I think, could be very, very good in terms of puck possession and controlling the play. So I think that's one thing I'd like to see them try. And then I think the underrated part is Alex Kerfoot. Can he be that third line center and be able to play under the Babcock system, or whatever happens? I think he could be a very underrated acquisition for the Leafs in that trade.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Everything that Sean said is I agree with. He's that would be the trade that is his signature trade, and I think having Sandin up in that top echelon with Barrie, I think would be very beneficial. Once again, Kerfoot as a third line center, I think he's a great attribute to the depth of the Leafs.
I guess I just am not. I'm not seeing. I'm not sure what people are. I'm not sure what Leaf fans are seeing in Kyle Dubas. Is my struggle. The Tavares signing, to me, I said it at the time. It was a great signing. It also kind of told me something about Austin Matthews a little bit. Like, did this organization really trust Austin Matthews? We're not going to get into anything about that before. And sure, he's off to a great goal scoring start. You can criticize the point that Babcock did not play Austin Matthews in the last minute, but then the other side of that is, can you not maybe ask, is there something that Babcock has seen in Austin Matthews that is not resonating? To me, I don't know what Kyle Dubas has done to be considered a whiz kid, because he has kind of put the Leafs into some salary cap jail. So I'm just a little confused about the love for Kyle Dubas.
Well, I mean, the media loves the guy, so the fans are going to love the guy. And I mean, he's a new age GM. He's fully embraced the analytics side. He's made trades that have brought in lots of talent. And while I think he's definitely not a perfect GM, and I think we're seeing that right now with the salary cap issues and the fact that I think there is very much a lot questions about whether the blue line is built for success, and the team in terms of salary structure is built for long-term success with so much money locked up on four forwards and all that. But I think with the depth that that he's helped bring into the organization, and I think there's the story's not done with Dubas. And if you look at Washington, they've had how many iterations of that blue line did they go through before they found the right one to be able to get them to the Cup final and for them to win the final? I think you can look at it and say he's put the Leafs in a position to be contending for a long time, but he's going to have to make tough decisions in the next year or so, and is going to have to likely move on from one of those four players, I think. But it's going to have to be a good trade, because if you look at as the game going on right now, Edmonton and New York, the Oilers have had their core four change, but they haven't been able to make that
they weren't able to make the right trade to bring in the right player or players to get the to build the right combination of players to be successful long term. And I think what Dubas has done is setting the Leafs up really well long term, but there's still moves to be made. There's still questions that he has to answer, and I think overall he's done a better job than I think you're giving him credit for, Tyler, and Kevin, but I think there are still questions to be had, and he's still going to have to make one or two big moves to put the Leafs into contendership for a long time. And I still think there's questions on whether or not that blue line is good enough for this season alone.
Yeah, I mean, they're a playoff team, so it's not like he's doing a terrible job, and I'm not trying to suggest that he's doing a terrible job, but I don't see a Stanley Cup winner with this setup and with what they're doing, and I don't know. I mean, I guess it's Toronto being Toronto. I mean, there's always this pressure for them to spend big on namers and bring back hometown heroes like they did with John Tavares, and would it be any different if there was another GM in there? Probably not. So to be fair to Kyle, maybe it's not him. It's just the circumstances, the market, the 59-year Stanley Cup drought or whatever it is. Or 52, I guess. All of that. That's not on Kyle. That's circumstance.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, as far as not trusting Matthews, I don't think that's the case. I mean, any team, if they had a chance to pick up somebody as good as John Tavares, they would have jumped on it right away, right? So as far as that goes, yeah, I don't think that there's a lack of trust in Matthews. I think there's a lack of trust in Matthews from Babcock, but as far as Dubas goes, I don't think so. But yeah, they will have to make some moves here in the future to try and better their team, because obviously if they don't go far in the playoffs this year, then yeah, it's not going to be the team that they have right now is not going to be the same as next year with the loss of Barry, CC. Not saying CC's a big part of it, but you also have Riley and Anderson up in the next couple of years too. So, but playoff success also hinges on how well Anderson does, and if he's able to play like he can play.
Yep, for sure. One more quick thing here, NHL wise. I think that this deserves a little bit longer of a conversation, but I don't know if we have that much of a time. I'm going to start with the trivia question. Who is tied for the scoring lead with Connor McDavid right now?
James Neal?
No.
Is Kucherov up there? I haven't looked at those.
He's not up there.
Patrick Laine.
Laine.
Yes. The guy that got the 2-year interesting contract. Now, he is streaky. I will grant him that. But are we not paying attention to this guy?
It's too early to really get too up with it, but I think the one thing you look at that he's got 3 goals, 7 assists. So he's known more for scoring as opposed to his playmaking and all that. So I think that's something to look at, but I think it's still too early to really get to at this point. If we're talking about this next in 2 weeks and he's still up there, I think then you can make a real case for this to be a big story to be following going for the rest of the season. But it's too early to really get too up and think about it. But I do think that he's got a big chip on his shoulder this year because of what happened last year and how the contract negotiation went. So I think it's something to watch, but I don't think it's a story to get too enamored with just yet.
Mm-hmm. But a guy that needs a good start, given how the offseason went. Patrick Laine. I mean, this of anybody, a good start is needed there.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, and especially with the Jets, I think they're a team and a story to follow for this whole season because of how decimated their blue line is.
Yep.
They traded away Trouba. Bufflin looks like he's going to be retiring or at some point here, and then you've got Morrissey who's now injured, and they lost Ben Sherratt, who's I think an underrated loss for them, and they're relying on their first round pick from last year or from this past draft in Ville Heinola and Neal Pionk and other no-namers that are on this team. And so their blue line is now really young. So I think you're going to see them take a bit of a step back, at least as for team. But if Sammy Niku, who's another one, and Ville Heinola can step up and Josh Morrissey can step up, I think potentially long term this might be the best thing for them. So, but I think the Jets as a whole are a team to watch.
For sure. Devin, did you have anything to add?
Just, I'm very surprised that line is up there. But it's too early to really have any tout in it. Giving him, that much recognition. I think he's a streaky player, and he's going to have his ups and downs. But it's good on him for having such a strong start after having a shitty year last year and having so much talk over the off season of his contract. So it's good on him.
Cool. Well, we'll leave it there. Sean, did you want to get into anything WHL wise or?
Well, I was doing some research on it, and one thing that came out was, and we're talking about with I think as a Canucks fan, where they're playing their fourth game tonight. Well, there's a lot of teams that are playing 5-6 games at this point, and when you look at the WHL schedule, the Vancouver Giants have played 10 games, while Calgary Hitmen are playing their 6th tonight versus the Edmonton Oil Kings. And the Hitmen are a team that I'm going to be not only been just because they're local and I've been a fan of them for a while, but as they've got some Canucks content on there with Carson Focht and Jet Wu, and I'm going to be putting forward the group name, the Focht Wu crew, going for this season to go watch them play. Carson Focht has got a late scratch in one of their last couple games, but he's put up 7 points in 4 games. And as was he, a 3rd or 4th round pick for the Canucks as an overager, that's looking really, really promising as maybe someone that was overlooked and undervalued by many teams, and the Canucks might be fortunate enough to have found a gem there, as well as Jet Wu, who started the season off with a couple scoreless games, is now 3 points in 5 games. So, and the Hitmen are 4-0-1 going into tonight versus the Oil Kings. So, I think the Hitmen are a team that are going to be a team to watch in the WHL this year, because I think they're going to surprise people and how good they actually are. So, and I think I just want to mention, I think I'd like for us to, and we're going to work on that to provide some more WHL content on this podcast, and we're going to get some guests on that are going to provide a lot better insight than I can for the WHL. So look forward to that, and as well as I said, let's all band together and become the Focht Wu crew.
The Focht Wu crew. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you rehearse that for a while there, John? Or?
Yeah. Are you in my class or something?
No, well, I just been thinking about it just because it's the play on the sound and the play on words there is fantastic. So
Because that just triggers all kinds of alarm bells. Some of that for me. Oh boy,
it's why I like it.
Yeah.
I also just quickly want to give a quick shout out for I'm doing play-by-play for the Great Vancouver Canadians for BC Hockey. If you have $9, and you may not, you can listen to me do play-by-play. But there is also another game that I will tell you that if you get a chance to find, it's on PlayNowFullScreen.com. The Fraser Valley Hawks and the Okanagan Rockets are playing. They may not be two teams that you may have heard anything of, but they are probably the two best teams in Major Midget in this league. Okanagan is an incredibly puck-moving team. Fraser Valley a bit more defensive. So I might take a chance to watch that. Not that you shouldn't watch the Greater Vancouver Canadians, but they had a very tough schedule at the start where they had to play the three of the best teams, and two of them are definitely the Hawks and the Rockets. So watch out for that. Well, that's going to leave it for now. We will be back next week. And how do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyCanuck03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I believe I'm Gord091.
That's a man that spends a lot of time on his Twitter. You can follow Chris at Schneids, SNSCHNEIDZ. Did I do that right? I did.
Yeah, and a big happy birthday to him. His birthday was Thursday.
Yes. And of course, you can follow Hyde Amazeballs at Hyde Amazeballs. And that's our week. We will be back next week. We will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.